Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm joined by co-host Gary Farmer. Hey, Gary.
Hey, how are you?
We've got a very special guest today. I want to remind each of you to like and subscribe on YouTube. It's Film Talk Radio. I'm pleased to be joined by producer Chad Burris. He's the new head of the New Mexico Media Academy. Hey, Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Jacques. Thanks for having me.
So this is from the Albuquerque Journal. Chad Burris ready to bring years of movie experience to the New Mexico Media Academy. You're a member of the Chickasaw Nation, and you'll be the first ever director of the Academy. It's going to be located in the Albuquerque Rail Yards. And once completed, the facility will offer industry standard hands-on and specific workforce training and job competencies for the film and TV and digital media, which includes a focus on virtual and extended reality and volumetric production.
Mm-hmm. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. I guess my inclination was to ask you, what is volumetric production? But more than that, Chad, you're going to do a lot for these kids. It's going to be major for people in Santa Fe and Albuquerque and all over the state that are going to have a chance for training to hone their skills as movie makers. Tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, excellent. Well, yes, it is going to be a state-of-the-art facility that is going to allow for the training, the readiness, the preparedness for a new generation of filmmakers, film crew, and hopefully it robustly all around enhancement to the film industry in the state of New Mexico.
I just wondered, after the shooting and at our famous ranch there, and then I worked on a series this summer with Emma Stone a little bit, and one day we had to shut down because we got shot at for in Espanola and couldn't carry on the shoot in the location and couldn't get enough security from the town, and so I just wondered, from your experience working in New Mexico for a long time as a production producer,
Yeah.
what do you think the state of our, both from the people that live here in the state and the crews that we're attracting from New Mexico? It seemed that there's a good need for training and such. Is that the primary goal of the new effort?
That is the primary goal. Yeah, I mean, my understanding, and I wasn't there to get this off the ground and get it, kind of build it up. I've come into it fairly recently, but with the growing production, clearly that's something I think that's very evident to everyone. There's the sheer number of productions that are occurring due to Netflix and NBCU and even Amazon with Outer Range and some of the other industry partners. The need to having more of those crew positions filled is as high as it's ever been, and obviously with the events that like you're talking about, Gary, the need to have those crew adequately professionally trained to a degree that can ensure that there's some competency and professionalism and obviously safety that follows those new members, those crew members onto these shows to benefit everybody, not just the industry, but all the people of New Mexico. It's tragic events or accidents, mishaps, or nothing that anybody wants to have happen on their watch or even in their industry, as the case may be.
Yeah, I guess we really faced the nation on that one. No, you must have a lot of things in the works then, eh?
I've got a few. Yeah, I've got a few. I mean, it's producer. You're only as good as your next project, right? So we've kind of got a few in the hopper, but they, like with anything in the film business, everything takes a lot longer than you think. So they're all in kind of various stages of trying to get the script right or out the cast or talking about financing options, which is the inevitable of all. How do you get something financed?
I was looking at the poster I printed it out for Fry Bread Face and me, and I saw, like executive producer, and then there's Taika Waititi, and then there's 19 others. And I wondered, how does that work? I mean, do you have to like satisfy 20 producers above you, so to speak, or some of those are just investors? How does it all work, Chad?
All those EPs, save for Taika, were investors. They, like I say, like with anything, like making a movie is like running a business. You have good communication, you have clear lines, of transparency. You're talking to everyone, you're keeping them informed of where you are with the development, the production, the post production, and then the rollout and the hopefully acquisition. We were fortunate on this project to have a lot of interest, and some fairly high level interest. I couldn't have been better blessed to have than the group of executive producers that we had. Mm-hmm. They were very cooperative, very helpful. All of them brought various skills to the table that we were able to utilize and lean on in certain occasions. And we've all stayed fairly close. I mean, the communication is great. I think I have a call this week, actually, a big group call with all 18, 20 of us to talk about sort of where we are, what buyers are interested.
Cool.
It's been a process, but yeah, it's like films take a village, man.
Yeah. I noticed Bill Way on the list, second in command there, and not that there's any order, obviously.
Yeah, I just met Bill on this film.
Good.
And he was great. He was fantastic. Couldn't be a nicer guy if you've met him.
Yeah.
And what a support of independent film is. That's something, the hero that everybody, all of us independent filmmakers need, is a guy like that is willing to come in and support unique, interesting perspectives and storytellers.
Chad, as a young actor, I really started, in photography, and I went to cinematography, and I used to belong to a camera unit, and we were editing on the old school, where you actually physically cut film, and it was the golden age of work. I mean, that was intense period to make a film. I guess maybe it put me off a bit, and then the technology's changed so much. But I remember as a young filmmaker, I decided I was going to go to grip school, and it was run by the union. There was actually a film workers union. I don't know if it was NABET or QP or something. It was back in Canada. But the grips then were like, man, they were skilled. I mean, they would do stuff like erect wood off a mountain so you get your camera off there, and they'd rig it all up. Are we talking about the same skill level that was in the days of film and such?
Well, I think everyone involved will have a different opinion on when it was the golden age and when they were all better. I would suspect that a lot of people involved actively in the business right now, grips included, would say we're better today than we have ever been. But I would certainly like to hear some examples of a difference. I think, yeah, I mean, ultimately it is, Gary. I think the training is going to involve, it's going to be industry approved. I mean, and hopefully industry oversight on that. I mean, we're certainly welcoming all the unions that are present in the state of New Mexico to come in and help have a hand in developing what that curriculum is going to look like, and have a hand in actually doing the physical training there, and what that training is going to look like for what the academy will eventually do. It's New Mexico. We've got some of the best technicians in the country, if not.
Yeah, Chad, I mean, I've been a long time actor, and obviously worked with a lot of producers, and I can't say I've, never had a lot of, you know, I don't know. I tend to just try to stay out of the way, you know, and just do my job. But
Mhm.
you know, we've had a friendship and a relationship as two working artists on, you know, in particular, two particular films that you've produced over the years. The one I'm always been fascinated by was this 2015 film uh, called Bear, directed by Natalie Lette. I remember she was out of New York City. How was that experience for you as the producer?
It was fun. I mean, it was. I would say that film was probably that film was a bit of a challenge for me for a number of reasons. Um, at the end of the day, I think the opinions on how what I was doing there were probably a little bit were different from me to the maybe to the filmmakers, but I think primarily it was we lost our two lead actors that had been attached to the film like a week or maybe even a week and a half before we were set to shoot. May have been 2 weeks, but we did lose our two lead actors, so we had to recast a couple of weeks before we were supposed to shoot, which caused us to go down. We were stressed on our financing in terms of what we were able to do, partially because of that. And there was, the Natalie and Alexandra were a filmmaking team at the time, and they were from New York and had a long history of being in the New York City film scene. So they came here with a lot of their uh, New York friends in key positions. That it was fine. I mean, that was what they decided to do. But somewhere there got to be a really strong division between New York knowing a lot better than what New Mexico knew, and that's always a difficult position to be in when you're trying to get something done on time and on budget and the highest quality that you can. And it's never also an easy thing to take when someone comes into your home, your turf, and says, we know better, and and doesn't act like they're happy to be there about anything. I think there was some feeling about that around the crew that I was always trying to manage. That it was just this kind of tension between a lot of people, and that's not you don't want to do that when you're making a movie. That's you always have to do a little bit of that, but that's really that just gets in the way of everything else. It's so hard to focus and get the job done when all you're trying to do is just manage personalities and just kind of keep things from exploding at any given moment. But otherwise, it was interesting. It was an interesting subject. I'm always glad to work with new people and new filmmakers. And certainly there were some talented people that came from New York, and filmmakers included. It was just think of a difference of opinion on a few things, and sometimes you don't always. The compromise is a little harder to see, I think, on some projects than on others.
That has a lot to do with the industry, doesn't it? I mean, in terms of personalities, people, and I mean, I guess in the old days we hear of all these cigar smoking, pink Cadillacs with pink suits. I mean, I've met a few of those in my early days, but that's often commercial movie making as well. I mean, Hollywood type productions and stuff. But the independent scene is really based on collective good feelings. You hope for.
Absolutely.
But that story was pretty dark, as I remember it in the first
Mhm.
place. And of course, I mean, are you telling me that Paz de la Huerta was a last call on that? She was the one recast
Yeah, she was. She and Diana Agron.
from
Yeah,
the popular TV series,
Glee.
yeah, Glee.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, both of those were last minute castings. I think the actors that had been attached to it before. I know Riley Keough was one, and the other English girl. I can't think of the name now. But yeah, it was sort of a last minute thing, and that Paz was. I had a friend of mine here in California that had worked with Paz on it and had known Paz personally, and we were throwing ideas around about who might be a good person for that character. And I don't know where her name came up, if it was me or somebody else, but she agreed. I think when he sent me her phone number contact, he included in a message and said, "Good luck." And you know Paz, Gary, so you know what that means.
Well, I don't really know her, but just she's a story in herself with her
Yeah.
last 20 years in the business and stuff, and an amazing talent. Just how it gets complicated is a story in itself, you know.
So, Chad, let me ask you more about the New Mexico Media Academy. How
Yeah.
much of it is about putting cameras in the hands of students? How much of it is about training them in story? What's the vision so far?
Well, the vision as it was at its conception was that it would be a training academy for more below the line positions that would allow for, like I said, that sort of robust, skilled, professionally overseen training to get more New Mexicans ready for opportunities, job opportunities with the big industry partners that are in the state, Netflix, NBCU, 828 down in Las Cruces, and start building out and trying to support the industry that currently exists. I think like I said earlier, I'm always a big fan of a robust independent film scene. I think that takes not only below the line, but some creative talent as well. So I think there's opportunities to have some benefit to creatives in the state of New Mexico along with this. That would be fantastic, and I would certainly welcome that. But yeah, at its inception, it was let's get below the line crew training. Let's get out into the far reaches of Mexico, and let's try to give these opportunities since they exist. And my understanding is currently there's a lot of out-of-state employees that are coming in, crew members that are coming in the state. So trying to offset some of that with New Mexicans, just making sure that they're ready to do it, and not giving any industry partners an excuse to not hire someone from New Mexico.
Are you going to
Yeah,
offer like some kind of degree or certificate or something?
Well, that's still to be determined. I think there's certainly cooperation with with what they call the consortium of consortium of educational partners, the CEPs, which is most, I don't think it's all, but most of the film programs in the state had come together and agreed that there would be cooperation, kind of an agree to agree scenario on developing a program or curriculum that would supplement what they are doing in their individual programs. So whether it's an actual, I don't believe it's going to be a degree so much from the academy as it might just be an enhancement to the degree that they're earning at their school.
Right.
But
Like
that's still
community college or
yeah, exactly, absolutely. Santa Fe Community College is one of the partners. CNM, UNM. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of them.
everybody, we're talking with Chad Burris. And Chad, I know you've worked with friend of the show, Sterling Harjo, particularly on a 2015 film called Miko that went on to win the Best Narrative Feature at the Santa Fe International Film Festival. What was that experience like? I know Zahn McLaren was in the movie.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, it was a challenge, like with all the little small films before Sterling had the current opportunity, which is probably still a challenge if we're being honest. I'm sure you would say. It was a low budget independent feature, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Those little small films are always hard to get going, to get off the ground, and to get it all done. You're doing it with such limited resources. But sometimes I think that can make for a more interesting film. I don't know what the analogy would be, squeezing a grape to make better wine or something. I don't know, or stressing a grape to make better wine. I don't know, but there's a there's a freedom to sort of lower budgeted films that you don't have as many restrictions, and you've got to get creative to solve problems a lot of times, and it's certainly a much more collaborative effort with all the parties involved. I feel like, because people are wearing so many different hats because there's so few of us out there making the films. But yeah, look, working with Sterling is always fantastic. I mean, Sterling and I did that would have been our fourth, maybe fifth film together. So we've done quite a few films together, man. I started with Sterling. God, the first thing we ever did was Goodnight Irene together. I mean, that was our very first project way back when with Casey Camp. and John Proudstar, both of whom are in Reservation Dogs. Yeah, I mean, it's look, you grow up, you do these things with people. Some are a job, some you like. Sterling and I were friends, and we'll always be friends. We're all, and it's the best way to do it, really.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I guess, are you going to start? You're not going to alter your path? Are you going to continue to produce as you take over this new role for the state? And
It's my intention to try to continue to produce. Yeah, I mean, I certainly this new role is going to take quite a bit of time and effort. But I think that look, I've always made the claim, and I'm not shy about this, that I think New Mexico could benefit from having a stronger, even still, independent film scene. And I think it's got everything it needs to have that independent film scene. I mean, we've been fortunate with all the production that's there in state, and I wouldn't change any of that. But I'm a big proponent of the lower budget films, although those lower budgets I think have gone up in my opinion and what those should be. But indie film has always been a kind of the backbone of an industry, or thing that kind of helped give the industry a little bit more panache and a little more flair. Certainly that I find a lot more interesting artistically. And it seems to have taken a bit of a backseat over the last few years, but I believe, and I think I'm actually seeing this proven true, that there is a robust indie film scene that's going to come back around, much like it was in the early to mid '90s. I just feel like it myself. If I'm a litmus test for anything, just having to trudge through all the noise and just keep up with all the series and the shows while they're great, they have their place. Boy, I just kind of long for that good old artsy, out of the box, weird indie film that is something to experience.
there was one I did a little research and found I just loved. Too bad about Los Valentes, because the track was the life of a gay undocumented immigrant is drastically altered when circumstances take him to a conservative town in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, so I've got a bit of a story behind that. I wouldn't say, maybe it's not much of a story, but that was Aurora Guerrera, who we did Mosquito y Mari with together in 2012 or 13, I forget. But great little film, Latina director, female, queer. She has been doing TV now since Mosquita, actually. And this was her second project, feature project, and timely. For when even now, I think it's timely, but it was especially timely then. And just kind of, it was a hard one to get off the ground. We kind of, I don't know, life gets in the way. Then you get busy doing other stuff, and before long you're looking back, well, wow, how did we move on so long? So many years have passed. And she and I have actually had discussions about that project and the timeliness of it still, and whether it's relevant, and the ability to maybe kind of bring that back around as something to put forward. She's certainly a talented filmmaker. I would always welcome the opportunity to work with her again.
Yeah, Aurora was an award-winning short filmmaker, and then Mosquita y Mari was her first feature film, and it went on to be accepted to the Sundance Film Festival and then have a real life after that. When you're working with a talented new filmmaker like that, how do you support them? What do you do to make their mission possible and support their job making the movie?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, look, I think a little bit of this is organic for me, so I'm going to try to put it into words, because sometimes it's hard for me to say exactly what you do. I think that there is it's a collaborative effort. I think if you go into anything with the understanding that there is understanding what your strengths are, what your role is, but more what your strengths are, and how that best serves getting where you want to be, which in a small film is getting the story up on the screen and getting it into the best, and getting it there in the most productive, efficient, and highest value way. Then you start from a good that's a good starting space. And I say that to say, look, I understand what I'm supposed to be doing, and my job is to kind of help and to push and to coax and to give little bits of advice here and there where I think it's necessary, and to not be I'm never dug in on the fact that I am right, but I will try to set the atmosphere of like, look, if I will say this is what I think, this is how I see it. This is what I think that we might want to consider, and let's discuss that and see where we get to. So with an independent filmmaker, usually in a small first time or around a first, second time filmmaker, a lot of those stories are very personal. So it's really about, starting with the script and reading through and making sure that you're having conversations around areas, or you might think the script could be stronger, the story could benefit from something else, and then once you get the story locked where everyone can be comfortable with that and everyone agrees, then it's about moving into production, and that's just about making sure that you're giving them all the resources and the time, more importantly, that you can for what you have to make the best film possible. Sometimes that's a little bit more handholding than other times. A lot of times, a lot of these filmmakers know exactly what they want. You just have to be able to give them the space to work within. And generally, I find they all they step up and do a great job. And I feel like that's just my job. Give them create the atmosphere and create the space for them to be able to tell the story they want to tell. That may be an oversimplification, but that's that's really it.
Fry Bread Face and Me is, it's getting a good rating. You had your first screening. How'd you feel about it at South by Southwest just a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
We'll say this was a Sundance supported film that Sundance did pass on. That's probably not maybe saying too much, but they did, which we were all surprised about. That said, I don't think we could have premiered at a better festival than South by Southwest. Festivals, business changes, whatnot, but I think that the South by certainly has the audience for this film. Our premiere was sold out, standing room only. People could not get in. They turned away throngs of people at the entrance. Lines out the door down the street, and they turned people away and told them they couldn't get in. The reactions to it were phenomenal. Opening night was something to behold, simply because we had a whole bunch of Indians in the audience, and certainly the responses and the laughter were raucous, and it just kind of created an infectious atmosphere in the screening. But everyone really responded strongly to the film. It was just, it was New Mexico at its finest in terms of just landscape. We shot it out at White Horse. Most of it was outside, recreated the Grandma's Navajo reservation, her ranch, and it was just big sweeping vistas and lots of beautiful skies and outside environment that everyone really got into. But the story's sweet. Our performers were fantastic. From the two young 11-year-olds at that time, who it was their first film, did such an amazing job, and I can't even tell you. To our grandma Sarah Natani, who was an actual weaver in her first film, and she was just, talk about all the questions at the end of the screening, man. Everyone wanted to talk to her. So yeah, it was a great festival. It was a great premiere. It was great screenings. The responses to it have been phenomenal.
Yeah, you told the Albuquerque Journal that having indigenous voices at the forefront is a priority. What can you tell me about that? How are you going to make that happen?
That I have no idea how I'm going to make that happen. But I know that's something that I've worked towards in my entire life, and something that I will never stop advocating for or representing. So, in somehow, some way, some form, that will be paramount to what I am trying to do with anything. It's just making sure that those indigenous voices are represented. And in this case, it's honestly just it's underrepresented voices. It's marginalized voices. I think if you look at my resume, I've done work with not just indigenous directors, but I've done work with Latino directors, queer directors, queer indigenous directors. You name it, all kinds of combinations of that. But it's underrepresented voices, and making sure that all people have an opportunity to tell their stories. And what a better place in New Mexico to have those stories and have those peoples represented. We've got such a good cultural pedigree, I think, with everyone that is in the state. And we're just, it seems like has been artists at the forefront of everything in New Mexico. It will make its way in there and be up at the front of what we are doing in some way. Yet how that happens just now, I do not know.
Well, you're doing it beautifully with Fry Bread Face and Me. I think hopefully you'll be able to present it to us here in Santa Fe
Absolutely.
at this year's Santa Fe International Film Festival. But I'm, this film is driven by young people. I mean, and then you just got the press release today about one of the former directors you produced, of course, Sydney Freeland, and all her cast announced. A lot of young veterans in there, and probably about 20 or 30 young, brand new Native American talents. So
Fantastic.
your work has, all of our work has seemed to fold out in a good way. That can you tell us some about your young talent that you cast for Fred Face and Me?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start by saying, the film, we shot it in the summer of 2021, which was really the first real summer that production was back. I believe New Mexico had anywhere from 20 to 25 productions going at the same time that we were shooting. We had, I don't know if it's fair to say a majority native cast, but we had, or a crew. It was an all native cast, but a native crew. But we had a high degree of indigenous crew on the show. Some of them in positions that it was their first time working in those positions, which was fantastic. And to see them kind of take on a new role. The talent on this was, like I said, we had the two young kids, Fry Bread and Benny, played by Charlie Hogan, Fry Bread from Phoenix, and then Keir Tallman, Benny from sort of all over. Had been in Phoenix, I believe they're in Gallup now. Owie is his mother. I think Owie's been, on a lot of shows. You probably know who she is. Sarah Natani, who is from, I want to say Four Corners area, but I'm not sure where. But the Weaver woman that she played the grandma. Had Martin Sensmeyer, who is, a fairly prolific native talent that's been around. Kahara Hodges, who is his wife, and she was our Aunt Lucy. And who else did we have on there? Nashim was on. Nashim came on and played one of the roles. Jeremiah was on. Jeremiah Bitsui came on and did one of the roles.
Right.
So, these two kids, however, this was always the challenge with the show. This kid, this story was about this young Navajo boy that grows up, that is in the city and doesn't have a whole lot of experience with life on the res. He's only grown up in the city, and he's a little effeminate. He's soft, and he's he gets teased by the kids at school, and this is set in the 90s. His whole ambition is to say he's saved his money and he wants to go see Fleetwood Mac in concert for the summer because he loves Stevie Nicks, and plays with action figures. But he acts out scenes from Dynasty in the different soaps at the time with his action figures. And so his parents send him to his grandmother's last minute to the reservation to spend the summer with her. He's all upset. So it's his coping with a fairly masculine, patriarchal kind of well, not even patriarchal, but a very masculine, gruff uncle, his grandmother, and then his young cousin Fry comes to stay with him at the ranch. And it's the story of these two kind of navigating life as kids on the ranch, out in the country, on the res, and dealing with these personalities of family, and really his understanding of what it means to be Indian as well, what it means to be Navajo in this particular case, as he's around it, because the young cousin is very traditional and the grandmother is very traditional. So it's sort of a coming of age discovery show. Both the kids were amazing. Keir was fantastic, phenomenal. His first role. Charlie is. It's worth seeing the movie to see Charlie's performance in it, because as an 11-year-old, and I believe she was 11, she may have actually been 12, but I think she was 11. The level of sophistication that she was able to bring to that, because that character is very sharp-witted, kind of punchy, funny, written in the script, and that's hard. That's hard for anybody to do, much less an 11-year-old, and she killed it. And she got more laughs at our premiere at South by than any of the other characters in the movie. So Yeah, I was more than impressed with them. They were, I mean, they were professionals. They knew their lines. They were on time. They showed up. They were ready to work. And you know, it's you've got limited time with two 11-year-olds. Of course, we only had them for I think 7 hours in front of the camera, maybe 9 from portal to portal. So you know, it helps that they do act and bring that professionalism to it, because you're able to get them in and set up, and when you're ready to go, they're ready to go, and you're not having to like coach any lines or get them through anything. They knew what they were doing. They knew what the scene was. They knew what they were trying to accomplish, and, and we got through it with those two with relative ease. It was a great experience.
Tell us a bit about, finally, maybe Chad, just a bit about your story, where you grew up and where you're from and stuff.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in western Oklahoma, in a small town called Weatherford. Split. My mom's side's from northeastern Oklahoma. My dad's side is from southeastern Oklahoma, down in Chickasaw Nation, Tishomingo, Ada. Most of my family grew up down in Tishomingo. And I grew up on the west side, went to school at University of Oklahoma, eventually law school at University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. Went out to LA in between college and law school for a stint. I tried my hand at a few things, and where I determined that I would be a better producer in the industry than I would anything else. And then when I was in Oklahoma, while I was in law school, I produced Sterling's Goodnight Irene. We made that while I was in law school in Tulsa. I started a private soft money incentive in the state of Oklahoma, which is the state at the time I think had 12 or 15% credit. And the new film commissioner at the time, Jill Simpson, who's still a very good friend of mine, wasn't able to get anything accomplished. So anyway, I figured out how to take a film incentive, and this is by virtue of actually going through a practice with Bill Rice, who was one of my Indian law attorneys there in Tulsa, and working on a project with him that this kind of clicked for me. But I had put together a structure from an old Oklahoma statute that was not being used really, but it was a venture capital statute, so it was a tax incentive statute for economic development. That I was able to cobble together a structure that would allow for an investment to go through both that structure and earn a 12% credit, and then still qualify for the state credit on the same monies, full investment into the film, for an additional 15%. So we went from 15% up to 27 on paper, all not quite overnight, but pretty much overnight. And started bringing a lot of films into Oklahoma with that. Continued to make movies, and because of that credit, New Mexico, I got on New Mexico's radar. So they were bringing me out. So this would have been under Richardson, to discuss if there was something to be done in New Mexico similar to what I had done in Oklahoma. We moved to Santa Fe, and we were there for 10, 11, 12 years maybe. But made 4 or 5 films in New Mexico. Continued to executive produce on other films around the state. I've had a fairly robust existence in the film space, all on the indie side, but definitely from producing to executive producing, financing to just setting up structures that allow for more films to get made.
That's exciting career, Chad.
All right, guys. Well, good talking to you.
Thanks,
Okay, thank
Chad.
you.